Hey everyone, welcome to English Pod, where we make learning English fun with friends. In this series, I'll break down keywords, slang, idioms, and cultural references from each episode to help you improve your English naturally. Watch before or after the episode to boost your understanding. Subscribe and turn on the notifications. Let's dive in.
Claustrophobic.
Right. The basic meaning is feeling anxious or distressed in small, enclosed spaces.
And Chandler says it perfectly, doesn't he? I'm getting kind of claustrophobic. Understated, as always.
And you totally get why. He's trapped in that ATM vestibule.
Yeah, those places are tiny. Glass walls, nowhere to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the perfect setting to trigger that feeling, that physical confinement leading directly to, well, psychological discomfort. It's quite primal, isn't it?
It definitely feels like it. Some kind of ancient warning signal. Okay, staying with feelings triggered by the situation. Intimidated.
Yes. The show notes, Chandler felt intimidated by Jill Goodacre.
Which, let's be honest, is pretty relatable. Feeling nervous or maybe even a bit scared because of who someone is, their status.
Right, and what's fascinating is how it affects Chandler. He's usually the master of the witty comeback, but here...
He just stumbles, loses his cool completely. It really shows how that feeling of intimidation can mess with your usual way of communicating.
It does. It makes you wonder what specifically triggers it with Jill Goodacre. Is it just because she's a famous model? Or something else?
Good question. Maybe it's the fame, the perceived, untouchableness. Plus, she's famously beautiful.
Probably a mix. Status, beauty, that feeling of being, well, outmatched socially. It taps into those anxieties we all have sometimes about comparing ourselves.
Totally. Okay, so the event driving all this. The blackout.
Simple definition. Electricity supply stops. Power's out.
But in the show, it's the catalyst, right? It forces everyone out of their routines and into these weird, close-quarters situations.
That's what's so interesting about events like this. They disrupt everything. Suddenly the normal rules don't quite apply, and you get these unexpected interactions.
Yeah, it definitely breaks down some barriers.
Yeah.
Or makes things even more awkward.
Both, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Which leads us neatly to where Chandler experiences his awkwardness, the vestibule.
Right. The script explicitly mentions the ATM vestibule. What exactly is a vestibule?
It's basically a small entrance hall or lobby, like just inside the main door, but before you get into the main part of the building.
Okay. So it's sort of an in-between space.
Exactly. And being trapped there in that transitional confined space, it just makes Chandler's discomfort worse. It's not just stuck, it's stuck there.
It adds to the claustrophobia we mentioned.
It definitely amplifies it, and maybe adds a feeling of being slightly exposed, too.
Okay, let's shift to some more informal language. Slang. How about strikeout?
Ah, yes. Classic slang, especially in dating. It means to fail, to be unsuccessful.
And Joey nails it when he tells Ross, "You totally struck out with her. Ouch!"
Yeah. Joey doesn't mince words.
But it's about Ross not making a move on Rachel. Right, he missed his chance.
Precisely. It's interesting how that baseball term is so common for romantic failure. It implies you had your shot, maybe even a few swings, and whiff. Nothing.
Yeah, a missed opportunity, gone.
Okay, another informal word one Chandler might use on himself. Dork.
Meaning like a socially awkward or clumsy person, maybe a bit nerdy.
Pretty much. The show suggests Chandler feels like a dork after some of his awkward attempts to impress Jill Goodacre, blowing the bubble with his gum.
Right. It's funny because dork can be an insult, but it can also be kind of affectionate, can't it?
It can. There's often a sense of harmlessness about it.
Yeah.
Endearingly awkward. When Chandler thinks it about himself, it's that self-aware, self-deprecating humor he does so well.
Yeah, it takes the sting out of his own embarrassment. Okay, describing the whole situation Chandler finds himself in, bizarre.
Just means very strange, very unusual.
And being trapped in a tiny glass box with a supermodel during a citywide power outage? Yeah, I think bizarre covers it.
It certainly does. It underlines the sheer unlikeliness, the weirdness of the scenario.
Life throwing you a curveball, and that feeling often leads to being panicked.
Yes, that sudden surge of fear, losing control. The script implies Chandler is panicked internally, even while trying to act cool. Especially, remember, when he thinks he lost his phone.
Oh, yeah. That internal monologue versus the external attempt at smoothness, it's classic comedy fodder.
It really is that gap between how we feel and how we try to appear. So relatable.
Okay, next word involves sound or lack of clear sound. Garbled.
Meaning unclear, confused, difficult to understand speech or sound.
Like when Joey mocks Chandler's attempts to call for help from inside the vestibule, making those funny noises.
Exactly. Says something intentionally garbled. The script note is perfect. It highlights the communication breakdown, the frustration of not being understood. Funny, but rooted in that awkwardness.
Definitely. And one last vocabulary item, trampled.
To be crushed or stepped on, usually by a crowd.
And Rachel uses it out of concern for Paolo's cat, right? Worried it'll get trampled in the hallway chaos.
Yeah, amidst all the human drama, there's this little moment of concern for the animal. A touch of realism in the chaos.
Okay, great list of words. Now let's dig into some key phrases from the episode. First one, make your move.
Very common, especially again in dating. Mean take action, show your romantic interest.
And Joey says it to Ross, right? Because you waited too long to make your move.
Yep, sums up Ross's hesitation perfectly.
It really captures that pressure, doesn't it? The right moment, anxiety. When do you act? Do you risk waiting too long?
Absolutely. It's all about timing and, well, courage, I suppose. It contrasts nicely with Ross's own description of his strategy.
Which is laying the groundwork.
Right, meaning preparing, setting things up for later. Rose thinks he's being strategic with Rachel.
Building a foundation, he says.
Yeah, but from the outside, especially to Joey, it looks like he's just stalling, dragging his feet.
Or just scared. It raises that question. Direct action versus slow build. What works best?
The show seems to favor Joey's approach, or at least uses Ross's hesitation for comedy.
Definitely. Okay, another phrase related to romantic action, but maybe more forward. Come on to someone.
Means making advances, showing sexual or romantic interest, often quite directly.
And Monica reveals Paolo came on to her during the blackout.
Which adds a whole layer of drama, doesn't it? Potential betrayal, awkwardness.
Totally. Shows how the unusual situation, the blackout, maybe lowered inhibitions or created opportunities for, well, questionable behavior.
It certainly complicates things within the group dynamics. Speaking of group dynamics, how about kiss up to someone?
Yeah. Meaning to flatter someone, maybe insincerely, to get on their good side.
And Joey throws it at Ross sarcastically about Paolo. Something like, way to kiss up to the guy who's doing your girlfriend.
Oof, brutal. But it perfectly captures that idea of sucking up, trying too hard to be nice for potentially self-serving reasons.
Exactly. Joey just cuts right through the social niceties there.
Yeah.
It's very typical of their friendship, that kind of blunt teasing.
It is. Okay, now a phrase reflecting the shared experience. We're all in this together.
Yeah, that feeling of shared challenge or difficulty. While maybe not said in those exact words, that sentiment is definitely there among the friends during the blackout.
You see them huddling together, trying to make the best of it, even with their own little dramas playing out.
It highlights how a shared hardship, even something like a power outage, can create a sense of unity. They rely on each other.
It reinforces their bond. Okay, and one last idiom, often associated with the end of a long day or event. Out, like a light.
Meaning falling asleep very quickly, very deeply.
It's not a specific line, but you can imagine after all that chaos and drama.
They probably were. Passed out instantly once things calmed down. It's a vivid way to describe total exhaustion leading to immediate sleep.
So, looking back, it's amazing how much linguistic insight you can get from just one sitcom episode, isn't it?
It really is. These words and phrases, claustrophobic, intimidated, strike out, make your move, they're not just plot points. They tell us a lot about feelings, social interactions, relationship dynamics.
Especially how things shift under unusual circumstances, like the blackout. It throws everything into sharper relief.
Definitely.
Communicate.
Okay, so let's get started. One of the first things that our sources point to is the character of Jill Goodacre.
Jill Goodacre. Right.
Now, for some of you, that name might ring a bell, maybe. For others, perhaps not so much anymore.
Yeah, Jill Goodacre was, well, she was a very well-known American model and actress, particularly famous for her association with Victoria's Secret.
Right, throughout the late 80s and into the 90s.
Exactly. She was a pretty prominent figure in pop culture back then.
And her prominence with Victoria's Secret.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about selling lingerie, was it?
No, not at all. It tapped into a very specific late 20th century ideal of aspirational beauty.
Heavily marketed, widely consumed.
Which makes her presence in that cramped ATM vestibule, you know, this kind of comedic clash.
Yeah, the mundane and the seemingly unattainable stuck together.
Precisely.
And in this episode, Chandler finds himself trapped right there with her during the blackout.
And the humor really comes from Chandler's complete shock, his over-the-top internal monologue.
Right. The source material even highlights his, inner panic at that moment.
Mm,
It's almost hard to imagine that level of mainstream fascination now.
it is, isn't it? With so many different kinds of celebrity today.
What do you think that says about how our cultural icons have, shifted since the 90s?
Well, that's a great point. The intense focus on maybe fewer key figures in fashion and entertainment back then, it created a different kind of celebrity.
Like Joe Goodacre represented something very specific, widely recognized.
Yeah, a certain ideal. Today, with the proliferation of media and influencers, fame is much more fragmented, I think.
But Chandler's reaction, it still kind of resonates, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. We can all relate to being starstruck, even if our stars are different now.
Okay, so building on that idea of celebrity and cultural figures, another interesting aspect is the introduction of Paolo.
Ugh. Paolo, Rachel's new boyfriend in the episode.
Yes. And our sources point out that his character plays into a very specific stereotype, the suave, romantic Italian man.
Yeah, the charming foreigner trope. It's
Right.
been a recurring figure in American media for ages.
And Rachel's enthusiastic Paolo when she introduces
That's-
him.
Yeah.
Is almost like a shorthand for this, right?
It totally is. It instantly positions him as this alluring, exotic figure, especially when you compare him to...
To poor Ross, who's all hesitant and awkward.
Exactly. And this trope, while often played for laughs, it also reflects, historical trends in American media.
How so?
Well, where European men, particularly Italians, were often romanticized,
Yeah.
maybe in contrast to American ideals of masculinity at the time.
Interesting. It's worth considering the potential, simplistic portrayals that these tropes can perpetuate, even in a lighthearted sitcom.
Definitely. Even when it's funny.
And it certainly throws a wrench in Ross's plans, doesn't it?
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
He's finally gearing himself up to tell Rachel how he feels, and then boom.
Enter Paolo, speaking Italian, embodying that charm.
It's a classic romantic comedy setup, isn't it?
Textbook. The humor relies partly on our familiarity with this kind of character.
Precisely. His very presence creates immediate conflict and comedic tension, fueled by these pre-existing cultural ideas.
Okay, moving on to Joey, we see another familiar archetype there.
The Italian-American ladies' man.
Our deep dive really emphasizes this persona for him.
Yeah, this is another stock character in American pop culture, right? The confident guy.
Often overly confident.
Right, but ultimately good-hearted, who thinks he's an expert on women.
And Joey's advice to Ross, just telling him to make a move.
It perfectly illustrates this. It's funny, but do you think that ladies' man archetype was actually, aspirational for some viewers back then?
That's a good question.
Or was the humor always just in the exaggeration?
I think there was probably an element of aspirational cool attached to it, maybe.
Yeah.
But the humor definitely also came from the fact that Joey's advice was often, spectacularly bad.
Huh. Yeah, that's true. It's that gap, isn't it, between his confidence and his actual success rate.
That's what makes it funny.
Exactly. And again, these seemingly simple character traits, these introductions, they aren't random.
No, they're built on existing cultural archetypes,
Right.
things the audience would recognize instantly.
Creating that familiarity and the comedic opportunities.
Okay, and just circling back to Joe Goodacre for a second,
Mm-hmm.
the implied presence of Victoria's Secret in that ATM scene. You really can't overstate its importance back then.
No, absolutely not. It wasn't just a store. It was a huge cultural phenomenon in the 90s.
The brand was synonymous with a very specific kind of glamour, that idealized image of female beauty.
Largely thanks to the visibility of their models, like Jill Goodacre.
So the fact that Chandler is trapped with the Jill Goodacre, it just amplifies his shock and awe.
Totally. It's subtle, but it's an incredibly effective way the show taps into the cultural zeitgeist of the time.
It makes you think, what brands or figures hold similar cultural weight today?
Yeah, that's a good question to ponder. What do they say about our current values?
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. This episode isn't just a snapshot of 90s culture.
Right. It also subtly demonstrates some fundamental English grammar concepts just in everyday conversation.
Let's start with the first conditional.
Okay, the first conditional, as our sources remind us, it has that specific structure, if plus the present simple.
And then will plus the base form of the verb, like will go or will do.
Exactly, and we use it to talk about real possibilities in the future and their likely consequences.
And a perfect example from the episode is Ross's internal thought. he's thinking.
If I don't ask her out tonight, I'll regret it forever.
Right. It clearly shows that potential future regret as a direct result of not doing something now.
And what's fascinating is how naturally this structure fits into, well, our internal monologues, our everyday speech.
Especially when we're weighing options, thinking about what might happen.
hmm Ross's internal use of it really highlights that human tendency to project future feelings based on present choices. It makes the scene more relatable.
Definitely. Okay, then we have the past continuous tense.
Ah, yes, past continuous. This one is all about painting a picture of an action that was happening.
When something else interrupted it, right?
Exactly. The example we have is something like, I was talking to my neighbor when the lights went out,
So the who's talking sets the scene, the ongoing activity.
which was then disrupted by the blackout. It's a really common way we structure narratives when we're telling stories about something that happened.
I remember a similar blackout years ago, actually, and that weird sense of everyone suddenly being in the same boat.
Oh, yeah. It's quite striking. You can almost picture those little conversations happening all over the city.
Just as the lights flickered and died.
It really grounds the story in that specific moment of interruption.
And this tense is so useful for providing context, creating that sense of immediacy when we recount events,
Yeah.
even casually.
Very true. Okay, next up, imperatives.
Imperatives. These are your direct commands or suggestions. Short, sharp.
To the point. They use the base form of the verb, no subject needed.
Think of Monica's immediate reaction to the darkness. Very practical.
What does she say?
Light some candles. Just like that.
Mm.
A clear, direct instruction.
They're efficient, aren't they?
Yeah.
And effective. You hear imperatives all the time.
Like pass the salt.
Or more urgent stuff. They really show how we use language to directly influence actions right now.
Our sources also pointed out the use of ellipsis in casual speech in the episode.
Ellipsis. Right. Now, for anyone not familiar with the term,
It's basically just leaving out words, isn't it?
yeah, when the meaning is still clear from the context, it's a way we make our speech more efficient, less formal.
Especially when talking to people we know well.
Mm-hmm. The example given is simple, coming, instead of the full, are you coming?
You hear that all the time between friends.
Exactly. And notice how coming between friends isn't just shorter. It kind of builds on a shared understanding, an intimacy.
The omitted words are just implied by the context, by the relationship.
Makes the exchange feel more natural, less stiff. It's like a linguistic shortcut that signals closeness.
Okay, finally, we have the present perfect tense. This one can sometimes be a bit tricky for English learners.
Yeah, it can be. The present perfect is used for past actions that have some kind of connection to the present.
Often when the specific time of the action isn't the important part.
Right. The example from the episode is, have you seen Paolo?
And the explanation our source gives emphasizes that the act of seeing Paolo or not seeing him in the past.
Has direct relevance to the present question, where is he now?
Exactly. It creates that link between past and present. It focuses on the result or the current relevance of something that happened before.
It's a really versatile tense, actually. Good for conveying information without needing to nail down exactly when something happened.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive into the one with the blackout, what are the key insights? What should our listener take away?
Well, hopefully you've seen how even, seemingly light entertainment like a sitcom can offer a really interesting snapshot.
A snapshot of the cultural norms, the values of a particular time.
Exactly. In this case, the mid-1990s in America, the references to figures like Jill Goodacre, the portrayal of certain stereotypes, it really grounds the episode in its specific era.
And beyond just being a cultural time capsule, it's also fascinating to see how these fundamental English grammar structures just appear so naturally.
In everyday conversation. It's a great reminder that grammar isn't just something you memorize from a textbook.
No, it's the invisible framework, right, that shapes how we actually communicate.
Absolutely.
Synopsis. A citywide blackout hits New York City, leaving the whole gang without power. Monica, Ross, Rachel, Joey, and Phoebe gather in Monica's apartment, lighting candles and chatting through the darkness. During the blackout, Ross tries to confess his feelings to Rachel but struggles to find the right moment, especially after an unexpected rival appears. Meanwhile, Chandler gets trapped in an ATM vestibule with Jill Goodacre, a Victoria's Secret model. Nervous and starstruck, Chandler hilariously fumbles through the interaction, trying to act cool while secretly freaking out. Back in the apartment, a romantic twist unfolds when a mysterious Italian man named Paolo enters the scene. He and Rachel hit it off, much to Ross's disappointment. The episode ends with Ross feeling defeated, Chandler finally relaxing around Jill, and the group enjoying their unusual, power-free night.
Thanks for watching. I hope this lesson helped you learn something new and made your friends' experience even more fun. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with your fellow English learners. Subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new episode breakdown. See you in the next one.